Nearly 50 years ago, Martin Luther King shared his dream with the nation. That vision became a reality as the world watched the inauguration of the first African-American president, Barack Obama. But that dream was built on the backs of many. In the early 1900s, African-Americans came to the West looking to escape the oppressions of the Deep South. Some settled here in West Las Vegas, but the discrimination against them soon followed. As we celebrate Clark County Centennial, we'll take a look back at our local heroes that fought to turn a town once called the Mississippi of the West into one of racial equality.
There wasn't nothing out here but mountains, and when I got to Las Vegas, it was like very scary to me, and I went all over the mountains coming on a bus. And I never will forget that I came to Las Vegas, and when I got off the bus, I got a taxi, and he brought me on the west side. And I remember the fare must have been $1 or something, and I think I gave him a $5 bill, and he wouldn't give me any change. He said, "That's all right, I'll keep the rest of the money for tip." But I was young and didn't know and had never been away from home.
Sarah Ann didn't have a choice where that cab was taking her. It was 1942 and segregation was in full swing. She was black, so she was taken where the black population lived, West Las Vegas. But historians tell us it wasn't always that way. In the early days of Clark County, there were so few African Americans that, in large part, they were simply ignored, leaving them to live, eat, and play where they wanted.
I won't say that there wasn't any racism. There was. There wasn't the segregation that we became known for after World War II, during and after World War II. Black children were in the same schools as white children, all of that sort of thing.
It was the early 1900s, and Las Vegas was little more than a whistle stop, born out of the railroad linking Salt Lake City to Los Angeles. And with the railroad came the first African Americans.
And with the railroad came not only railroad workers, but the porters. And railroad porters were in the main black. There were a number of railroad porters that were based out of here. You know, there was a branch of the Porters Union that was here. So there was a black population here right from the very beginning. And the first black child that I know of that was born in Las Vegas was born in 1907. You know, Las Vegas was only a couple of years old at that point. You know, so there's always been that presence here.
At the beginning of Clark County, the original goal in the city of Las Vegas had been to move African Americans and Hispanics and any other ethnic group into Block 17. Block 16 became famous as the Red Light District.
Block 16, which was where the brothels and bars were, you had Block 17, which was where the brothels and bars were for Mexicans and blacks and Chinese. So you did have some separation there. That was what was set up by the railroad itself. Initially, when Las Vegas was laid out, before the current Las Vegas was created, J.T. McWilliams had come in here in 1904 and created what he called the original Las Vegas town side, which is the west side. And that's the area that is normally thought of as where most blacks lived. The reason for that was that area didn't have any water. So as soon as Clark's Las Vegas town side was built, everybody moved there because they had water coming in. So people that lived on the west side tended to be people that didn't have the money to buy into the main community.
In the early 20s, the population of Clark County had risen to 5,000, with African Americans making up less than 3%. We slowly began to see the start of an African American community west of the railroad tracks. In 1931, construction began on Hoover Dam. The job of taming the Colorado River attracted thousands of new residents to southern Nevada. The African American population began to grow with the dam construction, but hopes of finding jobs on the massive federal work site were quickly dashed. Only a handful of blacks were allowed to work there.
The first absolutely segregated location in southern Nevada was Boulder City. And Boulder City was a federal reservation. And the federal government, when they set it up as a segregated area. No blacks were allowed to live in Boulder City. And that was a problem because there were a few blacks that were allowed to work on the dam, but very few. The idea that the federal government brought segregation in here is something that we tend to lose sight of.
At the start of construction, there were only 4 black workers on the dam. The NAACP stepped in and pushed for more.
African Americans had nowhere else to go. They had to be there.
Growing up as a young kid, wasn't allowed really to go in that area, but you know how kids are, would sneak off. And it was walking down Jackson Street to have all the casinos and the hotels and the restaurants. It was nothing to walk down there sometime, and we may see Cemetery Jr. standing out in front of one of the hotels or saying, you know, Eartha Kitt. And being a kid, I didn't realize who I was really, you know, looking at.
You could walk down the Jackson Avenue and the blues being played, and it was picturesque as well as entertaining. They used to do a lot of jam sessions on Jackson Avenue. The musicians from the strip hotels would come and meet the black musicians and jam until 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning.
It was just such a wonderful era then. It was really a lot of fun. And by it being segregated, that means that we all just we were all family, and we all sort of hung out together.
It was a very good time as far as businesses were concerned at that time. People loved to shop in stores in the West Side, and before integration, the nightclub business was great. Guys would, you know, come over and gamble on Jackson Street. Louisiana Club, the Cotton Club, you know, the Alabama Club, the Town's Tavern, that's still around. People would go over to Mom's Kitchen for good soul food.
All of the stars, the black stars, always would go there to eat. I can recall hearing Bill Cosby was able to perform at the Las Vegas Hilton. He would request that Mom prepare soul food and bring it out there to the hotel.
If Jackson Street was like the West Las Vegas Strip, then the crown jewel of West Las Vegas was the Moulin Rouge. Coming up, the playground for the heavyweights of Hollywood. In the 1950s, the black population was segregated into the West Side. Unable to go into the casinos on the Strip, African Americans opened their own bars and casinos. It was a happening time and about to get better with the opening of the Moulin Rouge.
It was just jam-packed every single night. Even when we closed the standing room only. People were in line waiting to get in. And everybody, all your stars were there. Edward G. Robinson, Sinatra, Belafonte, just think of all of them, and they were there.
I came down here for the opening and stayed a whole month because it was glamorous and everybody in the world was coming to see the Moulin Rouge. First integrated hotel in the world where there was gaming, because there wasn't no gaming nowhere else anyway.
Really, really first class. And the show was phenomenal. I know we had the best lighting then than they had at the Sands Hotel. I mean, they had the girls really looking like Lena Horne out there. And Halle Berry. I mean, it's really nice.
The Moulin Rouge opened its doors in May of 1955 and made history as the first integrated hotel and casino in Las Vegas.
It was built at a time when it was illegal for blacks and whites to mingle publicly. And so when a group of people decided that there could be an integrated or interracial hotel casino, it drew people from all over the world to come and be in that environment. And that was important because it meant that white people were willing to mingle with blacks in their own setting. Because usually integration means blacks go into a white environment, but this was integration where whites came into the black environment. So it was a great sense of pride.
Entertainer Pearl Bailey, a regular at Moulin Rouge, persuaded her cousin Bob Bailey to try his luck out west. Bob was a singer with the Count Basie Orchestra with a degree in journalism. In 1955, he was hired as a co-producer and master of ceremonies for the stage shows at Moulin Rouge.
It's time for the Bob Bailey Show.
His big break came when newsman and owner of KLAS, Hank Greenspun, offered Bailey a TV show. It would become the first show produced, acted in, and directed by African American talent in the country. The color barrier on TV was broken, with Bob leading the way.
Thank you very much, Chuck Hall, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to the Bob Bailey Show.
We really didn't realize what we had done until we reviewed where we had come from to establish where we were. And all of a sudden it dawned on us that not only were we participating in the show, but after the Moulin Rouge closed, the cost of the television time was borne by black sponsors, black company-owned sponsors. So we had the whole ball of wax and it was working.
Oh, wow.
Later, Bailey went on to Channel 13, which at the time was located inside the Fremont Hotel. He remembers having to use the back entrance to get into work.
And they said I couldn't come in through the front door and pass through the gaming consumer area. So it got me very upset. But it was important that I stay on television because I was the only black face on the screen, and it was important for our young people to see that it could happen.
We were talking about how things used to be here in Las Vegas for the entertainer. Say back in...
Just got a pain.
Yeah, I know.
Bailey didn't stay complacent for long. He pushed the segregation envelope by attempting to eat at the Fremont coffee shop. After being denied, he shared the story on air. Shortly after, Bailey was using the front door and became the first black to dine at Fremont.
As we've seen things progress, we just have to keep pushing and keep preparing.
Bailey went on to a long and distinguished career in broadcasting and as a community leader in civil rights, but remembers the early years as the most fun.
With memories of days gone by.
And the entertainers, after they got off work, would come and sit in. That was the kind of fun thing that we used to do.
Timing is everything. If Bailey had come out west just a few months later, he would have missed his big break at the Moulin Rouge. The jewel of West Las Vegas, without any warning, closed its doors just 5 months after opening, silencing the sounds of interracial harmony.
I know the whole group that was dancers, and they said that they performed that night to a standing only crowd. And the next morning they woke up and they said the Moulin Rouge is closed. It really was too early for its time, and I think that it was a threat to the Strip.
The policy of Vegas in those days, you did 2 shows a day. And because the Moulin Rouge initiated a 2 o'clock in the morning show, which they were always used to doing, a breakfast show, but that 2 o'clock in the morning show brought a lot of business to the West Side. And that was I think one of the main reasons why you wouldn't have any more Moulin Rouge.
The good times were over, and whether it was attracting gamblers away from the Strip or poor business management that caused its early demise, one thing was certain: West Las Vegas would never be the same.
It was really something. When the Moulin Rouge closed, everything just stopped.
It was a big black mark on the community that we've never recovered from.
It's been opened since the 1950s, but not with the same atmosphere that it once had. I think that time and era is gone.
Coming up, the battle was on to desegregate the Strip, but some would go to the extreme to stop the man leading the fight.
They took turns with shotguns around his house to protect him because they were going to kill him and throw him in Lake Mead.
In March 1954, an article appeared in Ebony magazine entitled "Negroes Can't Win in Las Vegas." The article railed against the town's strict segregation policies and impoverished living conditions of blacks in West Las Vegas. The town soon earned the nickname the Mississippi of the West, and it was a hard label to shake. But a strong black leadership started to develop on the West Side that would prove to make a dent in the town's tarnished image.
There were people there who were fighting discrimination, racial segregation, redlining, all of the things that were designed to keep African Americans down. But with the growth of the community, professionals began moving in. The first African American doctor in town, Dr. Charles West. The first African American dentist, Dr. James McMillan. Bob Bailey moves here to perform at the Moulin Rouge, and they bring to already strong leaders like Woodrow Wilson an additional level of leadership and organizational ability. And so in the late 50s especially, members of the NAACP form another group, the Voters League, to bring African Americans together to support candidates who will support civil rights.
And I set up, wherever I saw a group of people, I go to markets and places and register people to vote. I love to register people to vote and see to it they voted. I had a real experience once. I knocked on one man's door, and he opened the door buck naked. I said, put on some pants. I'm here to register you to vote.
Did you end up registering?
I registered him.
In 1960, Clark County's population ballooned to 127,000. The black population at 11,000 was growing strong. Also growing were the frustrations of continued segregation. Dr. James McMillan, president of the NAACP, decided to take action.
He wrote a letter to the city of Las Vegas saying, desegregate in 30 days, or we'll organize a boycott, we'll march, we'll take action. And he did this really without consulting anybody. And his geography was kind of interesting. He wanted the Strip desegregated. Well, the mayor of Las Vegas, Orrin Gregson, was sympathetic, but he had no control over the Strip.
McMillan's letter drew threats from local racists and mob-connected owners of the Strip hotels.
This was before we were married. They took turns with shotguns around his house to protect him, because they were going to kill him and throw him in Lake Mead.
Unwilling to back down, McMillan met with a spokesman of the unhappy casino owners. McMillan told him he was only trying to create a more cosmopolitan city, and more importantly, by allowing blacks in the casinos, it would only serve to make them more money. Increasing their bottom line, as it turned out, was something the casino owners could all agree on.
Although it is true that Hank Greenspun, the publisher of The Sun, Orrin Gregson, the mayor of Las Vegas, Grant Sawyer, the governor of the state, all played a role. What really happened is the guys on the Strip got together and said, yeah, we'll go ahead. And on March 26, 1960, they announced the Moulin Rouge Agreement. No written agreement exists. They got together at the Moulin Rouge, said, well, we've desegregated, let's go on about our business. And all that McMillan and other civil rights advocates here wanted was the right to go into hotel casinos and lose their money and spend their money just the way other people did. And 1960 then marks a turning point.
The agreement was a major civil rights victory, a victory that came a full 4 years before the Civil Rights Act was passed by Congress. The county's involvement with civil rights can also be traced to 1963, when James McMillan, David Hogarth, and other leaders of the civil rights movement demanded jobs on the Strip other than as maids and porters.
But they wanted to go to the front of the house and threatened to march down the Strip when Sonny Liston and Floyd Patterson were fighting here for the World's Heavyweight Championship. And the county did step in and take action because no one wanted, at the height of all of this attention for Las Vegas, to see a march here at a time that people were marching in the South and violence was resulting. So in 1963, there's another major step forward here for civil rights in southern Nevada.
Progress had been made, but the winds of change were blowing softly. It was the radical 60s and racial tensions were high. In 1963, the Ku Klux Klan bombed a church in Birmingham, Alabama, killing 4 black girls. Several months later, President John F. Kennedy was assassinated. His brother, Senator Robert Kennedy, suffered the same fate in 1968. That same year, Martin Luther King was gunned down, leading to a nationwide wave of riots. Las Vegas managed to escape the riots that had rippled through 60 major cities. But 1 year later, after an incident in Las Vegas of alleged police brutality, the streets of West Las Vegas exploded in one of the worst riots in the city's history. Hundreds of National Guards were mobilized to contain the violence from spreading downtown. After 3 days of arson, rioting, and looting, the riots ended. Not before 2 people lost their lives to the violence. In the 70s, more progress was underway. The Fair Housing Law of 1971 was passed in Nevada. That allowed African Americans to live anywhere they could afford.
There might be discrimination that would discourage that sort of thing. But the right existed. The result has been that West Las Vegas has maintained a good deal of its character, but not all of it. And it hasn't retained the political power that it had when African Americans were constrained to live in that area. The result has been some dilution of power of the African American community to influence events. At the same time, the African American community, having spread out, has gained influence in other areas that it didn't have before.
In 1979, that influence was felt in government. For the first time, African Americans' representation in the state legislature was in direct proportion to their general population in Nevada. That same year, there were over 400 black teachers and administrators in the Clark County School District, including Dr. Claude Perkins, superintendent of schools. Over 450 black students were attending UNLV, with Brenda Mason as the first African American on the University of Nevada Board of Regents. African Americans had made huge strides in equality, holding high-powered positions in local government, education, gaming, and law. But there were pitfalls to progress. As blacks were moving out of West Las Vegas, so too was support for black-owned businesses.
What happened was that when segregation stopped and African Americans were able to go into the hotels on the Strip in downtown, then the revenue stopped coming into the community.
West Las Vegas felt the effects of desegregation for many years to come, but today's leaders are fighting to restore the area back to the cultural neighborhood it once was.
You have a group of individuals who are working toward a common goal, trying to revitalize and bring people together and bring some restoration to the community.
Along with Commissioner Weekly, other leaders are giving back by helping to revitalize West Las Vegas with the expansions of the West Las Vegas Library, Doolittle Community Center and Senior Center, the building of the Andre Agassi School, and the Rainbow Dreams Academy.
The vision of an educational recreational corridor, you know, when I drive down Lake Mead now and look over and go, wow, dreams can come true.
We're starting the Ward 5 Chamber of Commerce, which is an association of business owners. We hope to enhance and grow the businesses that are in Ward 5. We want to attract new business and industry into the ward so that we can maintain our economic base as a community.
And I think that's our goal, is to never forget that it's a historic community, and I think it's our vision and goal to make sure that we commemorate the vision, remember all the pioneers and trailblazers whose shoulders we're standing on, the Bob Baileys, the Sarah and Knight Prettys, the Alice Key, the Woodrow Wilsons, and many, many more Bob Baileys of the world.
I say to all of the young people, have faith and courage and contribute to your freedom, because it doesn't last without your support.
If you'd like to learn more about Black history and the events in our community to celebrate Black History Month, just log on to our website at accessclarkcounty.com. And don't forget to join us next time as we leap back and look forward at 100 years of Clark County history.